It's interesting that you've chosen this Friday to launch the Brexit Party officially. I wonder what happened this week that made you think this was a good time to do it.
Something to do with betrayal, I think. Something to do with the Prime Minister, who endlessly told us we'd be leaving the European Union on the 29th of March, and that and then when she gave up on that under no circumstances would she extend beyond the 30th of June. And now we learn that we're not going to leave the European Union until the 31st of October. Halloween. So is it trick or is it treaty? I don't know. What I do know is that the government and Parliament are willfully disrespecting the vote, not just of the referendum, not just of the general election, but also the Article 50 vote, which 500 MPs voted for. So the time has come to fight back. And that is exactly why we're launching the Brexit Party today. And we now see May the 23rd as being the first step towards attempting a political revolution in this country. The two-party system doesn't work anymore.
Well, of course, you caused an awful lot of ructions back in 2014, the last time the European elections were fought, when your party then, UKIP, came top of those elections, caused quite a big political earthquake then. Of course, we know that's what ended up leading to those, the pledges for there to be an EU referendum in the 2015 election, and, of course, to save the skin of the Tory party, and then, of course, the actual Brexit referendum. What do you think you're going to achieve now, though? Because realistically, you could win the next European elections. Big turnout, small turnout, whatever it ends up being, you could end up winning. But that's not going to affect what happens in the House of Commons. While we still have a Remain-dominated House of Commons, what will that achieve?
Let me say something. If we were to do as well in these elections as I believe we can, then the very next day after the elections, MPs will say, goodness, look at the millions of votes the Brexit Party have got. I wonder what would happen to me if they stood in my seat at the general elections. I am today, Julia, not just saying that we're going to fight the European elections. I'm saying we're getting ready for the next general election as well. And what I noticed in the past, when I led UKIP, when it was on the up, is the more frightened MPs are, the more likely they are to do what people actually want.
Well, that would be an uncanny and revolutionary in our political system if that did happen. What about the fear that you may have your votes split? Now, people might be saying, we don't want to vote Tory, don't want to vote Labour, we feel they've let us down on this front. But you've also got UKIP still going strong. They've actually been boosted in the polls under Gerard Batten. Of course, they're looking at possibly standing even someone like Tommy Robinson as a candidate. You're going to be competing for those Eurosceptic votes with your old party. Who do you think is going to win out?
Well, I think in the end it'll come down to people. Let me have a look in a couple of hours' time at the people that I'm putting on the platform in Coventry today at this launch. Have a look at the men and women that I'm putting before the British public. High achievers in the world of business. People who could make a lot better job, by the way, of the Brexit negotiations than our Prime Minister. And then have a look at Tommy Robinson and his entourage. And there are some listening to this who will say, no, he's a white working class hero. But there are others that will say, well, he's been to prison 4 times and he's possibly facing a 5th prison sentence. And he's surrounded by people who, the day you and I shared a stage, which we did, didn't we, in Parliament Square?
The Leave Means Leave rally, yeah.
Right. And then down the street was the Tommy Robinson protest, which in the end descended into yobbery. So, look, it's up to the electorate, but there'll be 2 very different groups of people to vote for.
And in terms of the message that you want the European election results to send to the British, I suppose, the establishment, the British Parliament, you're saying you want MPs to be scared. You want well, not scared. You want them to should we have a wake-up call to listen to what the British people want? However, there's been some polling this week that suggests in terms of people who are actually planning to vote in European elections, we usually see a turnout of around 35% if we're lucky in European elections. Actually, it is the Europhiles, it's the Remainers who are more keen to vote and more likely to vote.
Well, let's see. I think at the moment there are a lot of people out there who voted Leave who are either angry or perhaps despondent at what's happened over the course of the last 3 years. And they're looking, my belief is they're looking for champions. And we are launching this party today. We're launching the Brexit Party. Yeah, sure, I'm the leader. But I promise you, have a look at the men and women I'm going to have around me. And I'm saying to all those despondent or angry Leave voters, we now are giving you a channel. We've got to get back out there. We've got to vote again. We've got to use our voice. And if we do, we will win again.
And do you think this will effectively be, to all intents and purposes, the second referendum that Ramonas want?
It's very difficult. It's too early to say how this campaign pans out. As you said yourself, in previous times, European elections have had very low turnouts. To even be thought of as a second referendum, you'd need to have a very high turnout indeed. But hey, we've got 6 weeks to go. It's difficult to call.
And since this is the first time I've spoken to you since we had that long extension, another 6.5 months to Halloween for it. We're told today in the papers that no deal planning has been called off by the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Mark Sebald, because obviously they think it's simply not going to happen. I don't know why they think it's gone off the table. It's certainly still on the table, but it seems there's an expectation within the establishment that Brexit is now not going to happen at all. Do you think it will?
Look, the truth of it is, even when Mrs May said no deal is better than a bad deal, she was picking up a phrase that I coined in the last weeks of the referendum campaign. The problem is she never actually meant it. And as with so many things with this Prime Minister, she's not just incompetent, she's duplicitous as well. And I'm sure Sir Mark Sebald was delighted to wind down the operation for preparing for a no-deal Brexit. They never meant it in the first place. And that is where the betrayal is. Article 50 said we leave on March the 29th with or without a deal, and 500 MPs voted for it and then changed their minds. This campaign is about democracy, our country, how the rest of the world views us, and essentially that trust that needs to exist between voters and those who govern them. And I'm just not going to stand aside after 25 years of fighting for this and be rolled over by this bunch of career politicians in Westminster. The fight back begins today.